Jigga Jay-Z.
Ho.
Sean Corey Carter. The Mr. Blueprint himself. Jay-Z, man, one of my favorite rappers of all time. Definitely a culture hero to me, because he really laid the foundation in regards to, I feel like, entrepreneurship in hip-hop. You know, he, in his early career, he went to labels to try to get signed like most artists do. And he got, kind of turned down by the major record labels. So instead of quitting and giving up, he said, you know what, I'm gonna get together with my people and we gonna build this thing on our own. And, Rockefeller Records was birthed by Kareem Burks, Damon Dash. And that's probably one of the most legendary hip-hop labels, period, to date.
I think it's the most known. You hear Rockefeller and you know
Rockefeller Records.
Yeah, you hear it. You know who that is.
You know Jay-Z. State Property. Beanie Siegel, Freeway. Kanye West. Rihanna. You think, Beyonce, that's his wife. Obviously, she wasn't under Rockefeller Records, but just his stamp on the game and his influence on the music industry, period, is incredible, man. He had, I think, 13 or 14 studio albums.
That all went platinum.
He's one of the best-selling music artists of all time. And I think he has, 22 Grammys? 21 set. What do you say? 21 Grammys. I'm a savage. But I think he has 22.
Keep racking them up.
But yeah, man, but the reason why I think he's an impeccable rapper, he's one of my favorite rappers, him and Biggie. But he laid the blueprint in regards to entrepreneurship, and how to kind of own your own and come in the game with equity and come in the game with ownership and kind of not selling off yourself to these major labels, but just partnering with these major labels and keeping your equity and keeping your ownership with Rockefeller Records. And he went on to create Rockaware, which I know when I was growing up was huge, was big.
Right.
I loved Rockaware. I don't know about you.
I had it.
I loved Rockaware.
We all had it.
We all had it. And, he went on to create the 40/40 Club. And then he went on to create Tidal, a streaming platform. And now went on to create Rock Nation.
Right.
And Rock Nation is kind of a resurgence of Rockefeller Records, so to speak. But they also have their hands in sports.
Yep.
Rock Nation Sports. So he's just the ultimate, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman.
And not to mention Douce.
Douce, yep.
That's a popular drink in the black community.
Yep.
Douce.
And I think he recently has invested or in like a marijuana company as well. So, man, he's just the ultimate entrepreneur. He showed how to take his ability, his God-given ability, and create it into a brand and take it to so many different avenues. And why I also think he's a cultural hero, because he created this this company and this label where he wasn't the only one that was able to shine. He was able, again, when we talk about cultural heroes, he was able to bring up his brothers and sisters and create opportunity for people.
Right.
And birth musical geniuses, i.e. Kanye West. So without Jay-Z, we don't have a Kanye. We might not have a Rihanna. We might not have
Rock Nation Sports.
We might not have Rock Nation Sports. We might not have I'm forgetting his name. His business partner manages him. Kareem Burks manages him. St. John, who's a new up and coming artist. So his imprint. We might not have a young Jeezy Rick Ross. When he was an executive at Def Jam, he was responsible. He played a big part in their careers. So Jay-Z, man, he laid the foundation. He laid the blueprint. But aside from that, man, he did a lot for the black community. He did a lot for the voiceless. He was a voice for the voiceless. The thing I like about Jay-Z, though, he wasn't big on broadcasting his philanthropy.
He was always low key about it.
He always did it low key. You always heard about it from someone else. It was never him bragging and boasting about what he was doing for the community.
Right.
And one notable thing he did was bringing the Khalif Browder story to light. Do you remember that story?
Khalif Browder story. I remember the name.
Yeah.
There's so many stories.
So he was a young kid in New York, and he got arrested and charged and convicted and sentenced to jail for a robbery that I believe, based on the documentary and the evidence, that he didn't commit. And I think he spent at least 3 years in jail. I don't know if he was awaiting trial or whatever, but they ended up releasing him. But while he was in jail in Rikers Island, he was a young kid, man. He got beaten on a daily basis by the other inmates, by guards, and guards turned a blind eye when he got beat by other inmates. So he came out after his 3 years. He gained all this notoriety and attention because he spent 3 years in Rikers Island, one of the toughest jails in America. And when he got out, he tried to get acclimated to society, but he ultimately struggled and couldn't, and he ended up killing himself. So Jay-Z brought that story to light and kind of resurrected it, and kind of just, again, a voice for the voiceless. So I appreciate and I salute Jay-Z for that, and the countless things that he's done for the black community.
And I think one thing that's notable to me is Jay-Z is the first hip hop artist, to age gracefully in the genre of music. Facts. Because hip hop is still kind of in its infancy stage. It's only 60 years old, maybe.
Yeah. And
so
Jay-Z's what? He's 51.
He's 51.
Yeah.
So he was a big part of the whole thing.
Right.
But you haven't seen too many successful artists transition into that older age,
right,
and exude the wisdom and the knowledge in music.
Right, and be a role model.
Quote
unquote. So, man, Jay-Z's my guy. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a big Jay-Z fan. Anyone that grew up with me knows we had many arguments in the lunchroom cafeterias about Jay-Z.
Who's the best?
You couldn't tell me Jay-Z wasn't the best.
It's a hard argument now. Well, can't say he's not.
Oh yeah, he's solidified. He in my opinion,
he's it.
He's definitely top 3. If you want to argue Biggie Smalls or Pac, I'm fine with that. But he's the greatest living rapper. That's for damn sure.
I say Jay-Z with the longevity, it trumps Biggie and Pac.
It trumps Biggie and Pac, but also just, again, the entrepreneurship, again, setting that foundation, that blueprint, and the philanthropy, and just looking out for his people, and also just giving us other great artists. Again, like I said, Kanye West, man.
Right.
That's without Jay-Z, we don't have a Kanye West. We don't have a lot of the great music that we have today. We might not even have a Drake. We might not have a lot of artists, because a lot of artists were inspired and looked up to Jay-Z.
Definitely.
So think about your favorite hip-hop artists, and think about if they were inspired and motivated by Jay-Z. We might not have them. We might not have a Nipsey Hussle. We might not have a Neighborhood Nip.
Right, because he was directly inspired by Jay-Z.
He was directly inspired, and I feel like he said in Hustle and Motivate, I did it the Hova way.
Right.
He followed Jay-Z's blueprint, and that brings us to our next cultural hero, without a doubt, the late, great Neighborhood Nip, Nipsey Hussle, man. Rest in peace. The marathon continues. TMC, man.
Way to flag.
Man.
Let's go.
The who said it? I think Kamala Harris said it. when Nipsey Hussle died, she said we're worse off. With Nipsey's passing in depth, as a community, as a nation, we're worse off. What he brought in such a, I don't want to say a short time, because he was hustling and grinding for a long time.
He was in the game for a decade.
He was in the game for a long time. Yeah, so let me not say a short time. What he was able to do for his community, LA, the Crenshaw district, South LA, was amazing. I don't think we've seen it to that capacity.
No.
He was someone that, if you're from that community, you saw it from its infancy. You saw him when he was 12 years old. He built a computer from spare parts, and that's how he started his recording music career.
Mm-hmm.
You saw him, sell his mixtapes out of his car. You saw him start the Marathon clothing store in the Crenshaw district. You saw him blow up to be this big rap star, but still be a staple in the community. You could still catch him at his store, in front of his store, talking, inspiring, and motivating, and touching the people.
Right. So he was definitely a man of the people.
He was a man of the people.
You could see him,
man.
You could touch him, you could have a conversation with him, and he's only going to give you a positive feedback.
Right.
He was a pillar in Los Angeles, and he will forever be missed.
For sure.
His music was inspiring. He told his story. It was all truth, 100% facts,
right?
No lies. And it was a very, very tragic situation, of his passing. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he died at the hands of another black man.
Unfortunately, yeah.
In his own community, from his own community. Mm-hmm. And that's what scares a lot of people to do what he did, to stay in the community, is because people, from all walks of life say, hey, the people that hate you the most are the people that are from your own hometown. That's why a lot of people leave their hometown, is because they can finally get away from that and start fresh.
Right. And a lot of times you can't blame people, right? You can't blame people for garnering a certain type of success and leaving that community, and kind of popping in and out and still supporting and helping that community and building it up, right? Jay-Z said in one of his songs, I can't help you if I'm, what do you say? I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. Mm-hmm. So I get the whole idea and the mentality of, garnering a certain amount of success and money and wealth and leaving the community you're from and, popping in and out to help the community and support the community. And that's why Nipsey Hussle was rare, because I think he knew the risk of being so accessible, but I think he also knew he was more of influence if he was in the community, if people could come up to him and talk to him, if people could see him pull up in his Maybach, if people could see his store, the Marathon Clothing, if people knew that he owned that seafood market, that he owned that Fat Burger. He knew that weight would hold more weight versus not being seen, not being in the community, just kind of popping in and out.
Because it shows when somebody is there and you see them from the ground up, like you said, selling CDs out the trunk to buying a building. Like, the people in that community saw him grind, so they know his success wasn't an accident.
Right.
They seen it, they touched it, they
right.
felt it, they
right.
knew it was possible.
Right.
I like to say, for me personally, I can't listen to somebody and learn. I have to see somebody do something to learn. And he did exactly that. He was an example where people can watch him make those moves and become successful. And it was inspiring to people who wanted the same thing for themselves.
He literally followed Jigga and Jay-Z's blueprint from a distance, right? Jay-Z being a huge artist being from New York and him being a kid growing up in Crenshaw, he followed that blueprint from a distance. But for a kid growing up in Nipsey's community, that kid was able to study, is able to study and follow Nipsey's blueprint up close. Like you said, he was able to see him sell the CDs out his trunk. He was able to see him start the Marathon clothing store. He saw a kid, people in his community saw when he got arrested in front of his store. You know, people in his community saw and knew he was hiring people in the community, past felons, people with records to work at his store.
Right, which is damn near impossible for felons to get jobs. So he employed the people who couldn't get jobs. He employed homeless people.
Right.
To work for him. And if that's not shows leadership and it shows giving people second chances and believing in the people in his community, I don't know what is.
I don't know what is. And people, you know, when he initially died, like you have people that say, well, you know, what I mean, he was a gangster. You know, he was part of the Rolling 60s. He wasn't, you know, this saint that everyone was painting him out to be. But, you know, I think he was just, he was, you know, he was a part of his environment. You know, that's what he grew up in.
Right, he was born in it.
He was born in it, and the gang culture in LA is very prevalent. If you born in a certain area, if your family and friends are of that culture, that's just kind of how you're gonna grow up, and that's what you're gonna be. But the fact that he was able to come out of that and, you know, move past that chapter of his life, and again reach back for the people that he grew up with. And the fact that he was, I think he died on a Sunday. I think that next day on that Monday, he was supposed to meet with the police chief to discuss how we put a stop and we put an end to gun violence and gang violence.
Yeah.
So he evolved, man. He evolved into a cultural hero.
Yes, he did. He was definitely a cultural hero, and you know, his spirit lives on in LA. You know, anywhere you go, you will see a Nipsey Hussle mural. Mm-hmm. You will see, you know, TMC, the Marathon. You'll see the checker flag. You'll see, you know, he's everywhere. And he'll always be here.
He will, man. I just remember the day we found out. It was just everybody, man. I knew it was crazy because, and I said this last episode, you never know how someone's going to impact you until they're gone, right? And it's like, I'm from Toronto. I'm not even from here. And I was always a Nipsey Hussle fan. But being a Nipsey Hussle fan, moving to LA when he died, I'm like, shit, I could have went down to the Marathon store and probably caught him and dapped him up and, you know, exchanged words with him. Mm-hmm. And that was one of my first thoughts. Like, when he died, it's like, I missed my opportunity. Like, I took him for granted. I thought he was going to be
there.
Here.
Right.
I thought he was going. I didn't think at that stage in his life, especially with just dropping his album Victory Lap and just coming into superstardom, he was going to get taken away like that.
Right.
And I remember I was on the phone with my sister, and she called me like right when it happened, and she doesn't know much about Nipsey Hussle. The only thing she really knew that he was dating Lauren London. Mm-hmm. But just the emotion from her and me, just knowing that we lost someone who was a hero. We knew he was good for the community. Forget his past being a gang member or whatever. He was someone that inspired the world, man.
Definitely. He was. He did inspire the world. It was just amazing just to see.
It was an amazing story.
The day he had his victory lap, when they drove his body and his casket around, I drove by the Marathon store that day, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And there was thousands and thousands of people out in the street.
Yeah.
You know, with their Marathon stuff, with flags, with hats, with anything you could think of to show homage and to show respect to Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah, he had like 20 some odd thousand people at the
Definitely.
Staples Center. At his funeral, his procession after the funeral was like 25 miles long. It was just, man, it was a spectacle. It was something to see, man.
It was. And for me, I think Nipsey, everybody from the West Coast, Tupac is our guy. He died in Vegas. He repped LA. He repped the Bay. We take Tupac as, he's West Coast. He's our own. But Nipsey was born and raised, and he is ours. He has a similar timeline to Biggie Smalls. Dropped his first album, smashed hits, and then, he was murdered.
And what's crazy is I just want to say, I remember catching Nipsey Hussle for the first time. I think it was on YouTube, and he had this. It was just like when vlogs were getting big, and it was just like a video camera, showing him, maneuvering and hustling through the hood. Like his story was documented even online on YouTube, right?
Yep.
That's when YouTube was getting big, and just his personality, how cool he was. He was just a smooth dude. I'm like, I fuck with this dude. And that's when he had Hustle in the House, and he had that big-ass chain with the Malcolm X pendant.
Right, yep.
I'm like, yo, this dude's cool, man. I want this dude to win.
Right.
So I would, at that time, I wasn't, like, really digging up music and downloading music, but I would always check in Nipsey Hussle and see where he's at. And I would always check in and be like, yo, he's not where I want him to be, I'll check in, peer out. Nah, he ain't there yet. And what's crazy is with Victory Lap, his album was executive produced by Puff. And it was his debut album, official on a major label, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or distributed by a major label, however that goes. But it was his debut, and it was his time to shine. It was a flawless album. Flawless. And literally, it's probably my second best album of all time. Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z being the first. And then Victory Lap. So the fact that when you listen to that album, and I told that to one of my friends, and my friends was like, man, I would respect your take on it being your second favorite album, but I think that's your take because he died. I'm like, yeah. It is.
We will never get another one.
We'll never get another one. The story leading up to it, the fact that it's called Victory Lap, the fact that it's Grammy nominated, the fact that when you listen to his lyrics, he's talking about death. He's talking about his encounters with death, being a gangster, growing up, being able to dodge it, being able to get around it, and now at the height of his career, going out like that, I can't think of a story similar to that. And the music was impeccable.
Yeah. Like I was saying, East Coast has Biggie and their story.
Mm-hmm.
The West Coast has Nipsey Hussle.
Neighborhood Nip. And just to touch on the marathon continues, man. That TMC, that mentality and that thought process will live on forever.
Yeah, I think we'll all carry that with us, in the back of our minds, that no matter where you are in life, whether you're on a high, whether you're on a low, just know that, the grind never stops. The marathon continues, and just keep pushing.
Keep pushing. And we was trying to find a quote. We were scrambling for a quote, and something just came to me. Was Nipsey Hussle said in one of his interviews, I think it was on Power 105, with Big Boy. He said, I think they asked him a question along the lines of just success and how did you arrive at the success? And he's like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I was always this fly and I was always this good of a rapper and I was always this dude. I am who I am today. He's like,
I had it all figured out.
I had it all figured out. He said, the only difference between me and a lot of people who don't make it is I never gave up.
He never quit.
He never quit. He knew from his from his career, the inception of his career, that it was a marathon. That you had to continue running your race. You couldn't stop, you know. You got to pace yourself. What do you say? You get control your breathing. You got to pace
yourself to control your breathing.
It's a marathon.